The following podcast is a presentation of Project Entertainment Network.
Bizzong.
Bizzong.
Bizzong. Bizzong. Bizzong.
Bizzong. Bizzong. Bizzong. Bizzong. Bizzong. Bizzong.
Oh, this is Bizzong, the weird and wacky fiction podcast. With me, your host, Mr. Frank. What's going on, Zongers? Hope you've had some time to recover from the last episode and all its hijinks, because I've got another weird and wacky fiction podcast to share with you this week, Zongers. That's right. We have a return guest this week, returning with a new book that's going to blow your friggin' mind, Zongers. So I hope you've been able to reset and rethink about what you're going to listen to, especially read next, because I've got a mind freaking twister for you this week, Zongers. That's right. The return of this week's guest is the one and only Mr. Joshua Chaplinsky. He who is the, head editor of Lit Reactor and the author of the short story collection Whispers from the Ears of a Dying Ape or some nonsense. I know I'm hacking that apart. It doesn't matter. He's got something new that you need to check out this week, Zongers. It is The Paradox Twins, Zongers, by Mr. Joshua Chaplinsky. That's what you need to be looking up right now, because we got some weird and wacky, really something you gotta pay attention to and get on board for. As you heard last time when Joshua was here, Lit Reactor, the guys Lit Reactor, the guys Clash Media, the guys Clash Books, the guy is just freaking intense, and now he's back at you with a thought experiment type of book. It's told in the what they call the epistolatory sort of form. It's that journalistic sort of storytelling approach, which we haven't talked a great deal about. But epistolatory form of fiction is something that pops up, at least once or twice a year in a book that grabs people's attention. This year, 2021, it happens to be The Paradox Twins by Joshua Chaplinsky. It seems to never be done the same way twice, and it's an interesting device as far as storytelling goes. So I'm always interested in people who use epistolatory as their mode for conveying narrative. So here we go. This week, The Paradox Twins by Joshua Chaplinsky in the epistolatory mode. At times, it sounds like I haven't exposed myself to this book directly, but I want to, obviously. And maybe you will too by the time this interview ends. So, let's get into the mind-boggling experimental interview of the one and only return of Joshua Chaplinsky here on Bizzong. Give us the gong. Oh, this is Bizzong, the weird and wacky fiction podcast. With me, your host, Mr. Frank. What's going on, Zongers? Hope you've had some time to recover from the last episode and all its hijinks, because I've got another weird and wacky fiction podcast to share with you this week, Zongers. That's right. We have a return guest this week, returning with a new book that's going to blow your friggin' mind, Zongers. So I hope you've been able to reset and rethink about what you're going to listen to, especially read next, because I've got a mind freaking twister for you this week, Zongers. That's right. The return of this week's guest is the one and only Mr. Joshua Chaplinsky. He who is the, head editor of Lit Reactor and the author of the short story collection Whispers from the ears of a dying ape or some nonsense. I know I'm hacking that apart. It doesn't matter. He's got something new that you need to check out this week, Zongers. It is the Paradox Twins Zongers by Mr. Joshua Chaplinsky. That's what you need to be looking up right now. Because we got some weird and wacky, really something you gotta pay attention to and get on board for. As you heard last time when Joshua was here, like Lit Reactor, the guys Clash Media, the guys Clash Books, the guy is just freaking intense. And now he's back at you with like a thought experiment type of book. Like it's told in the, what they call the epistolatory sort of form. It's that journalistic sort of storytelling approach. Which we haven't talked a great deal about, but epistolatory form of fiction is something that pops up, at least once or twice a year in a book that grabs people's attention. This year, 2021, it happens to be The Paradox Twins by Joshua Chaplinsky. It seems to never be done the same way twice, and it's an interesting device as far as storytelling goes. So I'm always interested in people who use epistolatory as their mode for conveying narrative. And so here we go. This week, The Paradox Twins by Joshua Chaplinsky in the epistolatory mode. At times, it sounds like I haven't exposed myself to this book directly, but I want to, obviously. And maybe you will too by the time this interview ends. So let's get into the mind-boggling experimental interview of the one and only return of Joshua Chaplinsky here on Bizzong. Give us the gong. I'd like to welcome back to Bizzong for a second round, because he's got a new book out and we got to learn all about it. I can't wait because it's something very different. Let's get into it with our guest this week, the one and only Mr. Joshua Chaplinsky. Joshua, welcome back to Bizzong.
Hello, thank you. It's good to be back.
It feels good. It's like a fresh shower having you back on here.
Yes, even though I am fully unshowered at the moment.
Oh, no. Okay, well, thank God this isn't smell-o-vision or anything like that, or we'd really have a problem. But you are back because you got a new book out, just dropped here at the beginning of April. It's called The Paradox Twins. It sounds very interesting to me, but I'm going to let you pitch the book to our fine Zongers.
All right. Well, you'd think I would be getting better at this because I keep doing it, but The Paradox Twins, yes. It is a very interesting book, at least to me. It's the story of estranged twin brothers who reunite at their father's funeral to discover that they no longer look alike. And then it gets weird from there.
And then it gets weird.
Yeah, all involving all sorts of family drama and sibling rivalry and psychosexual malaise and whatnot. Some spacemen, a lot of Kubrick's 2001. It gets weird.
Very moody, it sounds like.
Yeah, moody. I mean, when you're dealing with family, it's always a mood. Family's a mood. But at its heart, it is kind of a family drama, but it is infused with a lot of different genre elements, some horror, a lot of sci-fi. It's told in an epistolary format, so it's a kind of a collage of excerpts from different manuscripts and documents of public record, and there's even some screenplay excerpts in there, and there's kind of this overseer who's kind of pieced all these different elements together to form, his own version of this story about these brothers and this family. And he's injected himself into it, and there's footnotes, and so, there's a lot of stuff going on.
That part alone sounds like, the most interesting part about the Paradox Twins, which I've not had a chance to check out just yet. But, I mean, the epistolary style is Well, in my opinion, it seems like people have a either love-hate relationship with epistolary work. Is the entirety of the book epistolary, or is there some narrative woven into it?
Well, I mean, it's definitely, narrative heavy. There's a story. It's just, I would say the epistolary nature is the kind of the format and how it's told. The bulk of it comes from three separate tellings of essentially the same story from three different points of view, from the twin brothers and then this woman who lives next door and grew up next door to them. And two of them are memoirs, and then one is like a thinly veiled, overwritten sci-fi telling of growing up with their father. So the bulk of it is excerpts from those three sources, as well as some screenplay adaptations of those novels. So it's not like you're reading just weird bits and pieces of totally random things. There are some like book reviews and magazines and news clippings and coroner's reports and police reports and stuff like that in there, but the bulk of it does read like a normal book.
Gotcha. So where did the idea to go with some epistolary text inside the book come from? Was it the story that informed that, or was it something like you just wanted to experiment with as a writer?
Yeah, I just wanted to write the type of novel that I really enjoy. And, you said epistolary is a love it or hate it thing, and I happen to love it. I love books like House of Leaves and stuff like that. I recently read The Lantern Man, and of course the author's name is going to escape me because I'm on the spot here.
Is that Bassoff?
Yes, Bassoff.
Yes.
So it's a format and a style that's near and dear to my heart. And so when I was, writing The Paradox Twins, it's my first novel, and, I'm coming out the gate, and I didn't want to write just a straightforward novel. I wanted to write something that would really excite me and I would really want to read. So that's why I went with the epistolary format and the footnotes, and tried to make it a little more exciting to write and, hopefully more exciting to read.
And I was going to ask too, was it more, well, this is your first novel, but it's not your first rodeo writing. Did you find it more challenging, or was there any sort of a daunting nature to trying to make that all work?
I mean, it was definitely a challenge. It's a different process than just writing a straightforward novel or a straightforward story front to back. The genesis of The Paradox Twins is interesting. It actually started as a screenplay that I wrote probably about a good 10 years ago, the first draft. Back then, I was just super into screenwriting. I wanted to be a screenwriter, and I wrote a bunch of screenplays over a period of like 10 years in my, 20s and early 30s. And so The Paradox Twins was one of them. And, as a screenplay, it's more of a straightforward narrative. You can't really get funny with the, the formatting and stuff and the epistolatory thing in a screenplay. But at a certain point, I decided I got sick of writing things that no one would ever read. And I wanted people to read what I had written, no matter how few people that number might be. So I kind of gave up screenwriting and started writing short stories and submitting short stories. And in the back of my mind, I was like, I'm done with long form. I'm not really interested in novels. Short stories is where it's at, because, they're contained. You could, experiment within this, kind of restricted form. And then if it doesn't work, it's just, it didn't take up years of your life, and you move on to the next thing, and you could be all over the place and try different things. And that's what appealed to me, the experimentation and the variety. But then, at a certain point, the Paradox Twins was still in the back of my mind. And I was like, man, I spent years on this story and I did all this work, and I kind of did the hard part. I did all the plotting and the characterization and the dialogue and this stuff. I don't really want to start a novel from scratch, but if I took the Paradox Twins and just kind of, threw in some descriptions and fleshed it out and fattened it up a bit, it would be an easy novel to write, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And of course, that was naive of me and I was totally wrong. It was almost harder in a way, but I took the Paradox Twins and I started fleshing it out into a novel. But then, of course, along the way, I was like, well, I've written this story before, and I kind of don't want to write a straightforward adaptation of it front to back. How can I make this different and make it more interesting? And so, of course, I was like, oh, well, I want to make it epistolary and kind of chop things up and throw all these different things in there. And then, of course, I wanted to put footnotes in it because I like footnotes, even though I know 90% of people probably hate footnotes. And the bulk just kind of rolled from there. I'm kind of losing the thread here of the original question, but
well, you're okay. I imagine something like footnotes. I've never even tried to play with that. Is that difficult to manage as you're writing, or is there, like, with the power of the word processor, is it easier actually to do?
Well, it's weird because I kind of was adding the footnotes after the fact. Because, like I said, initially I was kind of porting this story over from screenplay to novel in a straightforward way. And then when I decided I wanted to incorporate footnotes, I kind of had to decide or figure out how to make that work or how to incorporate them. Because initially I had this kind of narrator character and just commenting on what was going on. And I was throwing in all these, just like weird factoids and interesting asides that kind of sort of had to do with the story, but weren't really part of the story, and I think that's a lot of what people don't like about footnotes, because it kind of feels like it breaks up the story and it's academic and it's just information,
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of needed a hook. I needed to find a way to make the footnotes an actual part of the story. So once I decided to do that, that was a little more difficult, and there were kind of multiple drafts. And then when I submitted the book to Clash Books, one of their main notes was about the footnotes, and I went back and forth with Christoph and Lisa about the function of the footnotes and how they should play out, and they really helped me kind of mold them into what it became and actually make the footnotes and the character writing the footnotes a part of the story.
Interesting. That's it. It sounds overwhelming to me as a writer, but it also is, I guess expresses or shows your dedication to making that type of text really work for the book, and of course for you. Do you see yourself, going there again, because this is something you enjoy reading, like you said? Do you see yourself, going back to this style of writing again?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think with every project, I kind of approach it, as a puzzle to be solved, and kind of, at the beginning, I gotta determine how I'm gonna approach it and how I'm gonna write it. And I don't think it'll necessarily be the same exact thing every time. Like, I don't think I'll necessarily use footnotes every time, because then I would just be repeating myself, and I'm sure people would get sick of it. But I think I'm always looking at a story, with the question in the back of my mind, how can I tweak this? How can I tell it a little bit differently, make the form itself more exciting, but without, losing the inherent nature of it being a story and telling a story and having a narrative, because I'm not trying to just make something that's just puzzling and incoherent and is like, I'm not trying to rewrite Naked Lunch here or anything like that. I'm more interested in, I like to look at it as I'm presenting a straightforward story in maybe not the most straightforward fashion, because I like my things I read. I like them weird and I like them experimental, but I kind of like it. It's almost experimental in an accessible way, like I still like there to be a story and characters and plot.
Yeah, you still want people to...
I guess I'm most interested in presentation.
Yeah, I was going to say, you still want people to be able to wrap their heads around it. You're not really going whacked out there where it's only I understand this concept, and I'm waiting for that one reader to come along and figure out what I was doing. It's not like a puzzle. You're just trying to be, like you said, experimental with it and try to tell story in a different or an unusual way.
Exactly. Although I will say there is an element of that. There is kind of a little bit of a puzzle to the Paradox Twins, not necessarily to be solved by the reader, but a careful reading will be more rewarding, and there's information there kind of in the subtext that hopefully once you come to the end sheds a kind of a new light on the story as a whole.
Now, I thought maybe, and perhaps this does sort of inform it, but anybody that doesn't know, like, there's the twin paradox is sort of a thought experiment that plays with the traveling at the speed of light principle. And when I think of like epistolary or especially footnotes and things of that nature, I think more of a nonfiction type work. And I was thinking that maybe that was what led you, because you're taking this sort of scientific thought experiment and creating a fictional story around it. And I thought maybe that's why you wanted to utilize that type of storytelling in it. Did that kind of help inform it?
You know what? I didn't really think of it that way. I mean, it definitely lends itself, and it definitely, when I first, the thought experiment of the Paradox Twins is kind of was the impetus for the story as a whole. When I was writing the screenplay, I came across this thought experiment, which is if you take identical twins and you put one in a rocket ship and send them on a near light speed journey away from the Earth, and then you have one staying on the Earth, they'll age differently. I forget exactly which is which, but I think the one left on Earth will age more.
Yeah.
Ages, and the one in the rocket ship, because of the speed it's traveling, they will age less.
Right.
But of course, there's like the paradox comes in with, it depends how you look at it within the framework of special relativity or not, and it has to do with point of reference. And from the paradoxes from the twin on Earth to the twin on Earth, it'll appear that the other brother will not have aged, but to the twin on the rocket ship, it'll appear as the twin on Earth hasn't aged. So that's where the paradox comes in. It's a little confusing, but it's pretty interesting. And I thought it was a great metaphor for just sibling rivalry as a whole, and that's kind of where the story sprang from. So I didn't really think, this needs to be told in this format because it's kind of a nonfiction thing, but it definitely lends itself to it. And it's funny that you bring that up, because just recently my wife was telling me my mother-in-law was reading the book, and that she said my mother-in-law asked her, she said she was reading it and then she went online to do research about the people and the characters in the book because of the way it was presented. She actually thought they were real people from real life. So I take that as a pretty big compliment that they were so convincing that she thought I had based it on reality.
Was that something that maybe you were aiming towards, or was that just a sort of happy side effect of somebody reading the book? You didn't even realize it might go there.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that is a super happy side effect.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, to have somebody kind of say, hey, maybe there is actually, I got to take to Google here and see if this is actually something. Because I guess it's that interesting sort of thing and I guess you make it so believable. And that's probably where that epistolary also works for it, to make it a level of believability as to almost seem nonfiction.
Totally. And, the whole thing is about blurring lines between these characters and their tellings of this story. And, there's different points of view within the book, and you're not sure, you're hearing this different takes on the same situation, and oftentimes they're conflicting. So the fact that then there's this other layer of someone in real life might think it's actually real, that it just goes along with the themes of the book. It's definitely a happy accident.
That's very cool. And like you said, it adds to sort of like layers to the book, on just completely different levels, beyond just reading the text and enjoying it. You mentioned too, of course, that it originated as a screenplay. Do you think it works better as a book? Do you think there's sort of two different animals? How do you, those twins, how do you see them working?
I definitely think it works better now as a novel, the finished product, not necessarily because of the format of the novel versus the screenplay, but because I put so much extra time into it and just I expanded on certain things and developed certain characters more. So I think as a whole, it's a lot more interesting and has a lot more depth to it. But again, I think that comes from just the extra amount of time I spent on it, rethinking it, adding to it, and I spent so many years with it and living with these characters that I feel like I knew them so well and really understood them so much better than when I wrote the initial screenplay.
Is a screenplay something you write often, or was it just for that particular story that you went with the screenplay writing?
Not anymore, but like I said, there was a period of like 10 years or so where like I was really into screenwriting and I wanted to be a screenwriter. So I wrote, 7 or 8 screenplays over the course of 10 years and I was sending them out and trying to get representation and all this stuff. Mm-hmm. But like I said, I kind of got sick of it and it's such a crapshoot and it's more about networking and knowing people and being super outgoing in that way, which I wasn't necessarily. And I just kind of switched gears. And honestly, I'm kind of much happier now writing fiction, putting it out there, making a little money, as small an amount as it is, having people read what I've written, as small an amount of people as it is. It's just as a whole been a lot more satisfying for me. So unless someone pulled up a dump truck full of money to my apartment, to write like Arachnid Person 7, I don't think I'm going to go back.
I can see that. And to me, I mean, it's not huge yet, but it seems like a lot of, because, all these streaming platforms are rabid for content, that they're more and more looking toward books, and then, going and getting a screenplay and through that whole process. So it might actually be better, to get a movie made or a show, by writing books as opposed to doing the screenplay thing. I think maybe these studios are looking for something, established, something that might have some degree of success as a book and take the jump off from there.
Yeah, totally. And I had this conversation with someone else. So it would be funny if this project took the incredibly roundabout way of starting as a screenplay, being adapted to a novel, then being optioned for film and turned back into a screenplay and then a movie. Like that would just be an insane trip for it,
Yeah, and fortuitous, because you could go, and as a matter of fact, I have the screenplay already written for you.
Exactly.
Save some money. They're probably all about that too in this day and age.
Yeah, I'd be like, look, I already wrote the screenplay, give the money to me. And then after that, they could take it and they could do whatever they want with it. I don't care. I won't be precious about it. I won't be like, it was a book first, the book is better. I'll just be like, it would go along with the themes of the story, just another iteration of this story, another telling of this story in another format. So I think it would work beautifully and it would work well for me because I would have more money.
So as far as the Paradox Twins coming to fruition as a book, was it a matter of course, it's again with Clash Books and, your previous work, Whispers in the Ear of a Dreaming Ape, also with them. Was it a matter of Christoph and Lisa coming to you going like, all right, we did pretty good with that, I want something else? Or was it like you saying, I've been working on this book and maybe are you interested? Which way did that travel?
Well, it's actually a pretty long, convoluted story, and I do go into it at length in the afterword to the novel. But basically, I had been hanging out with Christoph and Lisa, and had expressed interest in my writing and asked me if I had anything. And before Whispers in the Dreaming Ape, I had mentioned the Paradox Twins. This was kind of when I was still like, I don't know if I want to write a novel. I've had enough of the long form. And they were like, hey, are you working on anything? And I was like, well, I got this screenplay I'm tinkering around with, and I'm thinking of turning it into a novel, and kind of told them the basic premise or whatnot. And they were like, oh, well, that sounds cool. If you write it, we're definitely interested. And so that's kind of gave me the little extra push I needed to actually start writing it and working on it,
Yeah.
because I knew there was interest. I didn't necessarily want to spend all the time and effort on it if there was no interest, because I had been doing that for so long, and I was having fun writing short stuff. I didn't want to just put all this work into something that might not go anywhere.
Right, yeah, wind up having the same deal as a screenplay and not have a... But now that... So it was a little like half and half, I guess. Like you were tinkering with the idea, trying to play with it, and once you knew you had sort of a possible platform for it, that made it much more easier for you to, like you said, put that investment of time into it.
Exactly. And then, I wasn't really sure it would go anywhere or I would finish. And then that's when talks of a short story collection came up. And then, that was kind of there and ready to assemble and ready to go and much easier to put out. So that came out first. And that gave me time to really finish up with the Paradox Twins and, kind of get that into the shape I wanted it to be.
Yeah, and it's been very well reviewed so far. A lot of people are enjoying that style, and that sort of sounds like a bit of a mind fuck, which is always a good time in my opinion. But
it's a gentle fuck.
A gentle mind fuck.
Gentle
it spoons you. It spoons you. Nice.
Yeah, it does. It holds you afterwards. It doesn't leave. It stays till the morning.
That sounds like a good way to spend a night. Obviously you've finished writing this probably a while ago. Where did you pick up from here as far as your writing goes? Are you still sold on continuing with longer work, or are you back in your comfort zone of the short stories?
Well, I have been spending so much of the last year just editing the Paradox Twins and getting it ready for release and then working on promotion and stuff. But I have on and off been working on what would be a follow-up novel. And it's based on another screenplay I wrote because, don't want to waste all that hard work and the years of toil. So I have been working on that on and off while getting the Paradox Twins ready and promoting it. And I'm not sure when it's going to be done because, again, I am experimenting with the form and stuff and with how I want to tell the story. And, I'm not in a rush to get it out. I don't want to put it out before it's finished. So I'm kind of on a journey with it and seeing what its final form is going to be, kind of like the Paradox Twins, because it took a while to get there. And so I want to not put it out till I'm ready, not till I get there with it. So
it's going to be a while. Yeah, but but you're continuing with that sort of experimental spirit.
Yeah, I think so. Definitely. I enjoy reading it. I enjoy writing it. Hopefully other people are enjoying it. So give it another shot.
That sounds very, very cool. I also want to check in on, you're the managing editor over at one of our favorite book and literary writing websites, Lit Reactor. What's going on over at Lit Reactor?
Oh man, we keep on trucking. It's the same old. I realized recently that 2021 come October is the 10-year anniversary of Lit Reactor,
Wow.
which is kind of insane.
Yeah.
That I've been doing this for 10 years. I was there at the beginning, and it's just literally been a part of my daily life for almost a decade now. So hopefully, we got to start planning something, think of a little something to kind of mark the special occasion, but otherwise we're just out there doing what we've been doing for 10 years. Every once in a while I look at the homepage and I see just like the list of the recent articles we've published and who they're by and what they're about. And, it's still, there's a pride in the work, and I'm really proud of, our contributors and our writers, and that we've managed to put out, original daily content for 10 years and so consistently. It's it's more a testament to them than to me. I'm happy to be a part of it, and I still enjoy doing it.
Yeah, I mean, I fawned over it the last time you were on. It's just a fantastic resource for writers of all ilks. You can always pull, like you said, on any daily article that's up there or anything. You can always learn something new or get different perspectives. I think, just those, I particularly like when Jay Wilburn will put a story. I really enjoy his writing takes on things, and Gabino, and recently you have some stuff from Chuck Palahniuk up there. I mean, it's just invaluable, and 10 years is great, but it speaks to how important Lit Reactor is to the writing community out there. Did you, over the past year, because pandemic and everybody locked down, traffic wise, engagement wise, was there an increase because everybody was just kind of hunkered down and needed something to occupy their minds with? And I mean, that seems like it would actually benefit Lit Reactor.
Oh yeah, there's definitely people had a lot more time on their hands, to read and write and to kind of study and ruminate. And I think, although it's odd, the extra free time didn't necessarily translate to a lot more writing for some people.
Mm-hmm.
We've actually, had conversations about that, and people have written articles about just because you have the free time didn't necessarily mean you were getting the work done, and
right.
Just because of the extenuating overall circumstances of the pandemic and stuff. But there was definitely I would say there was an uptick in, interaction and reading and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and how about, I mean, I don't know if everybody realizes, like, you do literary classes that you can sign up for on Lit Reactor. Did you get, was there a greater participation there?
Yeah, I mean, participation has been good. We sometimes we run 4 or 5 classes a month, and some of them that have been run, have been running for years now, on and off, and it's just, I don't know, a testament to the teachers and people's, interest in writing and bettering their craft. Like it's amazing that we've been able to sustain it, or it sustains itself, really. It's just, and some of the instructors we've had in the past and instructors we continue to get, like we've, someone like, I use this example a lot, but someone like Blake Butler, who's essentially he's like when I think of experimental writing, like he's an experimental writer.
Mm-hmm.
And yet and when I first contacted him, I thought his class would be a hard sell, but he was someone I liked, so that's why I wanted him to teach a class. But his classes proved to be immensely popular and sells out time and again. So it's like you can't predict what people are going to be into and what's going to attract people.
What sort of, do you base your classes, or the topic, the focus of the class, based on the writer, or do you come up with ideas for classes and then seek writers out to conduct those classes?
I think it starts with the writer and what they can offer.
Mm-hmm.
I don't usually say, I want a class about this. Who would be the best person to teach it? Because each individual instructor kind of develops their own class and ideas. But I think it's kind of, there's 2 sides to it. When I'm looking for new instructors, I'm either looking for writers and teachers I like and respect and people whose work I appreciate,
mm-hmm.
or I'm looking at people who I know, other people really appreciate and would really do well and attract students. So part of it's selfish and personal, and then part of it's looking at, what's popular, who could bring the business in, because it is a business.
Yeah. First and foremost, you got to make some money to keep this machine running as well. But I mean, it's just so successful because the model is it's perfect for what you're doing, what you're trying to do with the writing community. It makes all the sense in the world. And as far as people contributing articles to Lit Reactor, is that Can anybody like submit articles at any given time, or do you sort of have a staff of contributors on hand?
Yeah, we don't have open submissions. We have a staff of contributors. I send out a monthly email to our list of contributors for pitches. But, people do reach out to me and sometimes, I'll be like, oh, that sounds interesting. Let's try it. Let's go with it. And then some of those people, wind up staying on and becoming part of the quote unquote staff. So, like I said, we don't necessarily accept unsolicited pitches, but sometimes it doesn't hurt. Sometimes they get through, or if someone is just interested in writing in general and reaches out and they're like, hey, I'm interested in writing in Lit Reactor. What would that entail? Are you looking for anybody? And because a lot of times we are looking for someone new. So if I get an email like that, I'll look into it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's but I think it's important too. Probably first and foremost for your sanity, not to have a slush pile of people trying to submit articles or pieces to the thing. But so I guess it's just like the classes, like more or less you approach people that you think would have something to share, and then see if they want to be part of the team. Is that generally how it works?
Yeah, I mean, especially now in the later years, it'll be more about, oh, we need some new writers. Give the old guys a rest or a break, because they're getting worn out. And then I'll look around and be like, who am I reading now, or who's on the scene, and who do I like and appreciate and think has something interesting to bring, and we'll approach it that way.
And of course, you yourself do, contribute. I think recently here you had 10 books that influenced the Paradox Twins. Very, very topical here.
That's a little selfishly self-promotion, but I don't write as much as I used to in the beginning, but I do time to time like to contribute articles. It's still something I enjoy.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you still put in that work. Do you find it more difficult to come up with sort of topics or ideas to make an article, or is that sort of doing this long kind of a no-brainer for you?
Yeah, well, in the beginning when I was actually more of a contributing writer, I would, each month kind of rack my brain for new ideas. And now I've settled into a more editorial role. I just kind of, if a topic pops into my head or something I'm interested in writing about, then I'll be like, oh, that's an interesting idea. I'll go ahead and do it.
So there's far more people that can do it a little bit better than you can. I'll leave it to the professionals.
Yeah, exactly. I'll be like, listen, you guys, it's your turn. You do it.
Yeah, I don't blame you there. I mean, that's something that's one of those things a lot of writing advice people will tell you. You gotta contribute to blogs. You gotta put up articles, and I find that sort of difficult because, like you said, something like even where you put up 10 books that influenced the Paradox Twins, it's sort of self-serving, and that's but that article, to me, made it work. Like I find that as a reader, and kind of interesting to see those books that contribute to that, and kind of put the 10 books together and have an idea of maybe you don't necessarily always think of those 10 books in the same circles, but here's a guy that wrote a book about it and kind of pulled resources from these 10 books. Seems a little bit unexpected, like Harry Potter's on the list, and I'm like, wow, that's interesting. I wouldn't have thought that in the same circle as something where 2001 Space Odyssey is mentioned. So that to me is, as a reader, is cool, but I imagine, like you said, it's like it's a little self-serving at the same time, but whatever. You're trying to run a business.
And, you know what though, that's why we don't have like a blanket no to writers who want to write something based on their own work, or once in a while write something that's a little self-serving that helps promote them, because it is symbiotic. It is give and take. We love writers, and we want their careers to flourish, and we want them writing for Lit Reactor to help them as well as us. And like you were saying about that article I wrote, it was kind of interesting and different because it was so personal and specific. A lot of times when we give someone free reign to just write about their own work, something they're really passionate about, we'll get something that really resonates with people and that is more interesting to read than just another rote list of like top 10 worst grammar mistakes. That's kind of generic.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a thing I do like about a lot of your 10 this or the rules of that. They're not those generic sort of things. Top 10 authors that have had an influence, man. Top 10 reasons why you shouldn't use those have been written 20 times over, but Lit Reactor consistently has very different sort of top 10 or books that influence or rules of articles, which I think I enjoy those more than anything.
Yeah, we definitely try, and like I definitely recognize people appreciate those things, and this is why we say yes.
That's very cool. So yeah, moving forward here, what do you see? I know you're working on something now that's kind of long term. Is there anything on the horizon that we might see from you next?
I mean, I do have a couple short stories that will be coming out over the next year. I don't know if they haven't really been announced, so I don't know if I can really
talk too much,
talk about them or not, but I haven't been told no. I do have a story that's going to be coming out in the third installment of a popular anthology series from the popular publisher Perpetual Motion Machine Publishing. So
gotcha.
I could say that much. The announcement hasn't been made yet, but we were told we were not forbidden from announcing.
Uh-huh.
So
you wouldn't want to get lost in those announcements.
No, I would not. I wouldn't want to get lost. I wouldn't want the announcement to get lost. So yeah, there's that. Those guys are great. I love working with them. Mm-hmm. And a couple other smaller things, but I am going to try to buckle down and finish this new potential novel, but no promises, because it is there are days where I'm like, oh, it's close to being done. And then there are days where I'm like, oh man, I'm never going to finish this. So
are you interspersing it all with short stories, or are you really just hyper focused on the novel at the moment?
Oh no, I totally jump back and forth. And it kind of seems to be a thing with me, and maybe a testament to my lack of concentration that, I'm writing these epistolatory novels that kind of jump back and forth and all over the place. And I'm kind of been the same way with my writing, in between. I'm not working on the novel every day, 24/7. It's like I'm working on it for a few days, few weeks at a time. And then, you got to give things a rest and let your brain rest, and then come at it with fresh eyes. So I find, especially lately, I work best, and especially when I'm experimenting with stuff that's not always clicking. It's just like you work on something and then you leave it alone, and then you go work on something else, and then you come back with fresh eyes, and it just, I don't know, it just makes me more excited to come back to things, and I feel like I'm making more progress that way.
Yeah, that's something I do myself, where I just feel like this is going nowhere. Everything's shit. I've been spinning my wheels for days and days. I gotta step away from this somehow.
Yeah, and usually when you come back, you look at what a few days ago you thought was a piece of shit.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, this isn't so bad, and maybe it's pretty good.
Yeah, and to me, like, that's like one of the greatest feelings in the world. Like, I know I have to remove myself from my own work. I know, like, if I write even a novel, I'll just write it, first draft, just be done with it, don't even think about it, put it away, do something else for like a month, and then come back and go through a second draft with fresh eyes, and you forget even what you wrote, especially something longer. You're like, this ain't half bad. I'm enjoying reading this guy.
Yeah, that's the greatest feeling in the world.
Yeah, then that's when I personally, I find the confidence of whether I think something should or should not be released is when I go back to it and go, oh, okay, this is good. When I sort of take it in as a reader, as weird as it sounds, like when you divorce yourself from your own work, and then you're able to take it in as a reader, and that's where I usually find the confidence to say, okay, I'm comfortable releasing this to the world.
Yeah, because if you come back to something after 2 months and you're like, oh, this is still a piece of shit, then it is probably not your best work.
There goes 15,000 words out the toilet. But you got to, like you said, you got to do it. It's not worth trying to. I don't think it's ever worth trying to massage. You can take the idea, but if you really sit there and go, it's 5 chapters and they're just garbage, it's never going to work. You got to toss that out.
If it doesn't work, it doesn't work, and that's kind of. That's a skill that's hard for writers to develop.
Yeah.
That skill of discernment, especially with your own work. It's really hard.
It is really hard, but I think it's so necessary. Anybody who's in love with their own words that much, when they're still, in the back of their mind going, this sucks, maybe you need to rethink what you're doing or something like that. Because I think you have to be your own worst critic and your own best critic at the same time.
Yeah, that's why I get suspicious of really prolific writers who are just like putting out book after book and just like have stories everywhere and stuff and like talking about how easy it is for them. I kind of like narrow my eyes at them and I'm like, I was like, because for me, it's so much more of a struggle. And sometimes I work on something for so long until I feel it's just right. And I'm like, how could someone else have it this easy, But I mean, everyone has a different process, works differently. So
yeah, and there are those that do it and have a decent readership, but they're it's what they putting out cotton candy or you're putting out filet mignon type of thing,
that's true.
And I think there's a time for both. I'm not disparaging it, but it's just as a writer, you got to sit there and go, well, I just can't write like that, and not for me.
Yeah, exactly. You got to determine, who your audience is and what type of books you want to write.
Right. And if you want to make any money or not.
Yeah, well, that's a whole nother story.
If you're okay with not making money, you can go with the filet mignon, I guess.
Yeah, if you want to be poor, if you want to eat once a month instead of every day.
Right, yeah. So, yeah, I definitely, I enjoy your, dedication to being literary, I guess is the best way to put it. You're trying to do something a little bit different and stand out, make your work stand out. You're not just spitting out novels, like you said. You're not writing for James Patterson. So that's great, but it always makes for extremely interesting story. I know I enjoyed a lot of the stories in oh my God, Whispering Dreams of
Whispers in the ear of a dreaming
Whispers
ape.
in the ear of a dreaming ape.
I get it wrong myself once in a while.
That's a challenge. Was that, I forget our discussion, was that was you? Well, that was a titular story.
Yes, yeah.
But you decided to go with that one. I mean, it's nice sounding when you have the words in front of you to remember.
Yeah, it's just a little difficult.
Oh, man. Joshua Chaplinsky, it's been great having you back on the show. The Paradox Twins sound so awesome. I can't wait to check it out myself. And again, great things going on. Lit Reactor, congratulations to a decade of helping people deal with their writing addiction. Because
10 years.
That's really awesome. So congratulations to you and the rest of the staff over there. That's on behalf of the rest of the writing community, that's a tremendous goal to hit.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And make sure when you do finish up whatever you're working on now, you come back here on Bizzong, because we got to talk about it.
Definitely.
Joshua Chaplinsky, Zongers. Man, he can deliver some twisted ass fiction in my estimation. Of course, the Paradox Twins sounds, it's like 2001 in bizarro format. Like, I don't know if you're picking up that vibe, but I'm totally picking up that vibe. I'm picking up, who did we listen to earlier with the slasher fiction? Michael Paul Wilson, like the Space Odyssey vibe, like just total sci-fi weirdness. That's what I'm picking up from the Paradox Twins. I think it may be a place like less explored in weird and wacky fiction, maybe, and perhaps. I don't know if you're feeling this, Zongers, as much as I'm feeling it. Like lately, I know I'm delving into like extreme horror more and more lately, and there's a reason for that, and that reason is because that's where the excitement seems to be coming from. And there's really a lack of excitement out of weird, wacky, bizarro fiction of late. I'm not abandoning it, but I'm just, I need to go where things are happening. So I think the things are happening in those extremes, which is, the ultimate core of what Bizzong is, into those extremes. I think that's happening in horror right now. And that's where I've been focusing my attention, but I never ever want to abandon, those classic bizarro, chords, those roots, and it's things like the Paradox Twins comes from out of that. So we need to always keep our eyes on that genre, as, you know, as much as I'm focusing on extreme horror and bringing that to light, and they're enjoying the hell out of that, especially on things like the Godless Horrors channel on YouTube. I am seeing those people who write that stuff, like exploring deeper, digging deeper. What is this bizarro thing? So Bizzong to me right now feels like a conduit between those two things, like extreme horror and extreme bizarre weird fiction. And I'm proud to be there as a conduit for that. You know, as much as I see this new wave of extreme horror coming on, I never want to, you know, lose my roots in that bizarre, odd, weird fiction thing. Like that's what we're all about here, Zongers. So it really warms my heart to see that sort of thing happening organically. Both sides sort of finding one another, and hopefully driven in large part by this podcast, Bizzong. So I hope you're getting that sensation as well, Zongers, finding both sides of the coin. Maybe it's Godless bridging the gap with our YouTube channel, and maybe you're just listening here organically on the podcast. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. If we're all finding new fucking cool ass forms of fiction that we fucking love and identify with, and whether it's crazy extreme splattery horror or whether it's just the fucking cool ass as hell fucking nature of experimental bizarro weird fiction, as long as we're getting there, Zongers, through our channels and whatever, fucking A, that's what we're all headed for. So it's with that I leave you this week, Zongers. I hope that Bizzong is the conduit. That's what I'm leaving you with this week. I hope Bizzong is serving as a conduit between two sort of things that just feed off of one another creatively, and just that we can all read that and experience that and vibe off of that of one another. That is the most beautiful thing in the fucking world, Zongers. That's all I got for you this week, and I hope to be back with more of that shit for you next week, Zongers, because I fucking love all this shit. I am focusing on the weird, the wacky, the wild, the extreme, and the untamed. And until then, Zongers, you are now free to go and listen to these other great Project Entertainment Network podcasts.
Hey everybody, it's Kevin Goatee.
It's Kevin Israel.
And you're listening to Gutting the Sacred Cow on the Project Entertainment Network. Hey, Kevin, what exactly is Gutting the Sacred Cow?
Gutting the Sacred Cow is a podcast where we invite comedians and talented people every episode to come on and trash a movie that you probably love or someone you know loves.
That's right. Our guests have trashed such films as Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Gone with the Wind, Grease, even Star Wars. Can you imagine the balls on that guy? Did he succeed?
I cannot.
Yeah, well, listen and you'll find out. But this is Kevin Goatee and Kevin Israel for Gutting the Sacred Cow.
Hello, is anybody out there? Anybody. This is Jim Cobb. If you are hearing this, the worst has happened. I've recorded a podcast at the end of the world and will broadcast it on channel PEN every Friday. It's all about the apocalypse, books, movies, TV, how much food and water will you need in your bunker, all that kind of stuff.
Excuse me, sir. You're gonna have to keep the noise down. You're in a library, and you're scaring the kids. The world hasn't ended yet.
Sorry, ma'am.
Shh. You're in the library at the end of the world with host Jim Cobb.
Fridays, exclusively on Project Entertainment Network.
This has been a presentation of the Project Entertainment Network.